Hello, Danvers, and welcome to the Danvers School Committee Candidate Forum. Elections are coming up this coming Tuesday, May 4th, and we have 4 candidates who are running for 2 3-year terms for school committee. My name is John Call, and I will be the moderator for this forum. We are also joined by Erin Nolan from the Salem News, and she will be asking the candidates the questions. In alphabetical order, our candidates are Alice Campbell, Robin Doherty, Johan Hunter, and Mark Zuberich. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for a closing statement, and 90 seconds to answer the questions that Erin asks. Before we started, we drew names out of a hat to see who would go first, and they will go in reverse order for their close. Each candidate will have the opportunity to be the first person to answer one of the questions, and then they will rotate in the order that we started with. So with that, let us go live to our candidate forum. Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for participating tonight.
Thank you, John.
All right, so as we stated earlier, we drew names to see who would go first. Robin, you're going to make your 2-minute statement first. Please go right ahead.
My name is Robin Doherty. First, I'd like to thank DCAT for hosting this forum and to all those who serve or currently serve on the Danvers School Committee. I am a lifelong resident of Danvers. I have my undergraduate in English and secondary education and my master's in reading K-12 from Salem State College. I have my doctorate in education in teaching and learning, and my focus there has been on differentiation. For the last 4 years, I have served as a Smith School Community Council representative, and I was selected to contribute to the Danvers Public School strategic plan for 2018 through 2023. I've also served as a guest lecturer at Salem State University. I've served as an AP presenter through Mass Insight. I've led my district in professional development from struggling to advanced learners. I have contributed to other school improvement plans over the years. I currently teach English at Malden High School, which is one of the most diverse high schools in the state of Massachusetts. There I also teach co-taught special education class and honors level courses. Education is my passion, which is why I'm running for school committee. As a career educator, I consider the students in my classroom my kids, and I hope to bring my knowledge and drive to the school committee so that we're able to move from good to great. When it comes to our community, I don't believe that there is anything more important than the quality of our school system. As I want to contribute more to serve my community, I'm running for school committee, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 4th.
Very good.
Okay, next, Mark Zuberich.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate the time that you and DCAT are devoting to this. The best way to give back to our community is to serve and participate in town government. And the school committee is part of the town government. I have dedicated myself to public service for many years, including elected, appointed, and town meeting and finance and the select board at one time. I will be a valuable voice on the school committee. I am dedicated to listening and providing guidance for the betterment of our schools, which reflect our community values. I will serve as your school committee member without the need for on-the-job training. I am not a teacher, so you have to take that under consideration. I am well prepared and have extensive experience in all the functions of local government and public education. The most serious issues that the new school committee must consider as a priority is that the pandemic and rapidly changing state and local regulations to returning back to school have been frustrating for students, parents, residents, and teachers alike. Students deserve a quality education It must not be hampered by the political restrictions which continue to be imposed on our educators, students, and our entire community. Having better communication between the community, teachers, administrators will help us work together to make the best decisions for our students. We are all proud of the commitment that Danvers community made to support our schools. This includes.
Thank you, Mark. If you have any other comments that you would like to make, you're welcome to make them in your closing statement.
That was 2 minutes?
It has 2 minutes. Goes quick.
Boy.
All right. Next up, we have Alice Campbell. Go ahead, Alice, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Hello, my name is Alice Campbell, and I am running for the Danvers School Committee. First, I'd like to thank Greg and the team at DCAT for providing us the opportunity to give us this platform to voters get to know us a little bit better. Look, we're at a crossroads right now in Danvers. We're coming off a school year where many families and students lost trust in our administration. We're still trying to understand what this new normal looks like for our students and how the past year of remote learning has impacted the learning journey. We're also trying to manage other challenges within our school district that have gone unresolved, such as the lower than state average in MCAS, bullying, gaps in special education, weak efforts towards diversity and inclusion, and differentiating in the classroom. If we want Danvers schools to produce different outcomes, then we need a school committee willing to lean in, listen, and act in the best interest of our students. Over the last 2 months, families have poured their hearts out to me. They have felt frustrated that they haven't been listened to and felt like our schools haven't been meeting their expectations. Now is the time for the school committee to be better engaged in public discussions with everyone in our community. I'm running for school committee because we cannot accept status quo anymore for our schools. I'm the only candidate here with children exclusively in the Danvers school system, and I'm invested in a better education for all students in Danvers. We cannot accept complacency anymore, and we must hold the administration more accountable to our student success. I know I'm not single-handedly the solution to all of this, but I promise to be the voice of families to ensure there is more accountability and transparency within our school department. I kindly ask for your vote on May 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, Johan, when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Johan Hunter, and I'm running for Danvers School Committee. Again, I'd like to thank everyone at DCAST for giving us this platform and this opportunity to speak. I am a mom of 2 boys, ages 5 and 8, and a wife. I have a small business in the area. It's an early education school. I'm very familiar with the education process from the foundational elements that are necessary for children to be successful. And I'm also a lecturer at a local college, and I teach college freshmen there. So I am familiar with what we really need those students to have in order to be successful at that level. As a result of my business experience, I'm very familiar with budgets, and I feel that it's extremely important that we can hone in on what we're doing financially in the district so that we can better serve those students. We have a multitude of things that we need to tackle this year. First and foremost, we need to come together as a school committee, bring our perspectives together so that we can better serve the population. We need to raise the standards of our educational curriculum. Danvers can be a top school district. We need to look at the adjacencies and the lessons learned from other school districts that are nearby and take those lessons and bring them to Danvers. We want to create some transparency between our parents and stakeholders and the school committee. We know that parents have had a tough year. I myself have experienced some of that, and we want to be able to provide some clarity and transparency so that everyone can be involved in the process. The other thing that we want to do is ensure that our curriculum is inclusive of diversity and inclusion practices. We want to make sure that we have a diverse talent pool with teachers, and we want to make sure that every student that's in our community feels welcome and accepted. Thank you, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on the school committee.
Thank you, Johan. Okay, that was great, everyone. And now we get to the fun part. I'm sure Aaron has generated some great questions for you, so I'll turn it over to you, Aaron.
Hi. So my first question is, whoever is elected to the school committee will face the unique task of having to lead the transition of the district into a new normal post-pandemic. What do you foresee as some of the greater challenges in that process, and what is the school committee's role in that transition? Are there any changes that were made during the pandemic that you see becoming permanent?
Okay, and Robin, you're first to answer that.
So I think definitely what we have to think about is there's no such thing as normal anymore. There's a new normal. And because we went through unprecedented times and it was a burden for everyone, we really need to think about what are the mitigations and remediations we need for the children of Danvers. Because we have not experienced those before, I don't think that there is an easy solution to that. I think we need to continue to assess the students in various ways, and that's from a social emotional standpoint, that's from an academic standpoint. We need to definitely look at identify student needs and start to put practices in place to help make sure that the students are succeeding. We need to think about that, although the students are back in school and it's great, it is April and there's like only a couple more months left of school, and these issues will not be solved by June. This is going to be an ongoing practice. This is a time that the school committee needs to be reflective and all stakeholders in the community and find out what's working, what's not, reassess our failures and come up with better solutions. It's also a great time to look back at our strategic plan, which focuses on a safe learning environment, student engagement, and a comprehensive curriculum. And we need to make sure that the goals that we have for each of those initiatives are being met and continue to go back to them.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Mark, same question.
Same question. The question is really, what should we do after the pandemic? What we need right now is an independent school committee that must lead and not just follow. Making the education process more open and obvious. We need to determine what have the students lost over the last 15 months, basically, and how can we make that up, because we cannot leave anybody behind. We need to get community feedback, because after campaigning, the residents have many, many questions and issues, and they need to put their input, and we need to put that input into action. We need to improve the expectations, technology, and standards. Everyone that I've spoken to has been very concerned about the technology that we're using, and it has not produced the results that are expected. So we can improve that by having a school committee that will lead, and what they need to do is get their act together and move forward and getting back on track.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Okay, Alice?
Well, I've said this before. I see that there's three challenges for the school committee as they're looking at the public schools for 2021. First, and most importantly, it's about rebuilding trust. You know, many families in our district lost faith in our administration this past year because they didn't feel heard or even just fairly represented in the decisions that were being made. I think the second piece Mark spoke to is technology. When our district went fully remote last March, it was clear how far behind we were in technology, and we really need to help the school district and the schools solve for this. We need better technology both in the classrooms and how they communicate with us as families and citizens within the district. Special education. We need to solve for this. I heard from so many families frustrated with how their special education was handled while the students were remote. I believe every child in our town should have access to the same level of education. we need to solve for this and we need to course correct this. The school committee really needs to work with administration and hold them accountable to get students back up to learning levels and standards pre-COVID. For your last part about what's great to keep, all I've heard is how everyone loves their mask breaks. So definitely incorporating more outside is what I've heard.
Great. All right. Thank you, Alice. Okay, and Johan, your turn.
Absolutely. As we transition into a new normal, the first thing that we really need to do as a district is change our mindset. The way that we learn and the way that we function is different today than it was 20 years ago. And I think COVID-19 hit us in the face with that if we didn't know that already. We need to look at frameworks that we're using in the district. There are different frameworks out there that we can use. We have families that are living a different lifestyle than they did 20 years ago. Both parents are working, both parents are commuting, etc. And we need to be able to accommodate that into the learning practices. We want to look at our educational standards and ensure that we are meeting our goals and fix the things that need to be repaired in order to get us to that high school standard status that we want to be at. The other thing we really need to look at is our educators. A number of educators retired as a result of some of the things that happened, the technology changes, COVID, lifestyle changes, etc. And we need to replace those educators with strong educators that can really come in and help us shape up this district. You asked what should remain. I do think that one of the things that should remain is the ability for stakeholders and parents to be able to Zoom into meetings, the ability for us to be able to access things at a finger's touch, again, because parents are working parents and they do want to be involved, but they don't always have the ability to be physically present.
Excellent. Thank you, candidates. Those were all very good, very thoughtful answers. Erin, your next question.
So this past year, the district faced numerous allegations of racism, homophobia, and hazing, which led to separate investigations by the administration, the Danvers Police Department, and a private investigator. How do you believe the district handled this issue? And what do you think the school committee can do to promote a more welcoming and tolerant environment for all students?
Oh, this is my favorite issue that I've been struggling with for many months now, because it all started back in June or July, and the school's issues have surfaced, but no information is available to the taxpayers or the parents. Well, some of the parents have received some information, but the residents have not. What are the issues and how will these be resolved without public knowledge? We need to know what the issues are, and then we need to determine how to fix them. But we cannot keep it only to the school department or to the school committee, because the entire town is a village that makes things happen in for our children. So what we need to do is first determine what happened, how did those issues get resolved, and what can we as residents do to make things better. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Okay, Alice.
Thank you. Look, I spoke to many families about this. I think what has frustrated families the most is the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability. I spoke to a few families who actually have gone through the diversity training that was instituted. I worry that it's not enough. I worry that it was done to just check a box. We as citizens do not know what the outcome should look like. There is no accountability in it. There is nothing to tell us whether or not the training has worked. There's problems to get solved, and I think that it's going to take a strong school committee to hold the administration accountable for these difficult conversations. We can't continue to brush things under the rug that I've seen happen over the last couple of years. We need to stand strong. We need to make sure that everyone feels safe. Students should focus when they walk through the building on education. That is their sole purpose. That is the reason why they go to school. And we need to be there to support them and make them feel safe.
Great. Thank you, Alice. And Johan?
Mhm. Yes, pertaining to the issues that took place in this past year for racism, we would love to know what actually happened so that we could confer and say if we felt it was handled properly. But unfortunately, I would echo that there was not a lot of transparency with respects to what was done. We heard that there was some sort of investigation that took place, but we did not, we were not privy to the details of that. So it's very difficult to even get into that. With regards to what we need to do to promote solving some of these problems, there are several coalitions in the North Shore that we could be a part of, that other schools are a part of. There are adjacent districts to us that are doing equity audits. There are districts that are doing a lot right here in the North Shore, and we can learn a lot from those practices and also mimic them. We have access to these studies that have been done, and to my knowledge, I would think that we would be aware. If I, as a layperson, am aware, I would think that we, as the school committee, the existing school committee, would be aware of that as well. So the question is, are we looking at those as options? And if not, is that something that we should look at so that we can solve these issues?
Great. Thank you, Johan. And last but not least, Robin.
I think everyone did mention that we do want to know what, transpired with the special investigation. We don't know that. But what we do know is that we did fail with the strategic plan because we did not have a safe learning environment for at least one kid, multiple kids, which even if you have one, you failed the kid. So although that was implemented in 2018, 2020, we still did not have a safe learning environment. So what we need to do, I think, is we really need to be holding everyone accountable. That's teachers, that's administrators, that's students, all stakeholders. We need to make sure that we are saying, like, we will not tolerate discrimination in any form, and teach really what does it mean to be inclusive. Equity doesn't just equity comes as far as race, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, etc. It's all encompassing. It's all part of that. The first thing that we need to do is really look at, where are we? We need to make a commitment, and we need to look at the referrals that we're seeing as far as discipline referrals in the district. I don't think 2020, 2021 school year is going to give us that information because we have been remote and hybrid, but we need to look at, are the things that we're using working? Great, we started anti-discrimination at the high school for athletes. That needs to go K through 12, absolutely, for every single student. And it needs to be ongoing for everyone.
Great, thank you, Robin. And again, thank you to all the candidates for these very thoughtful answers. Okay, Aaron, your next question, and Alice, you'll be answering this first.
Several parents and local politicians have expressed concerns about the impact of the pandemic on students' mental health. What do you think the district can do to address these concerns?
I had 2 children remote for close to a year. As much as parents can say and teachers can say how resilient children are, it was very difficult. It was hard. I watched my first grader cry, starting after being on a Zoom for an hour. I'm lucky. My children, thank God they kept up, but it was because we were there to support them. I think the administration, I think schools, we really need to take a step back to see what the greater impact of this past year has been socially, making friends, making them feel comfortable back in public again. This is a transition that we can't expect kids to do on their own. We need to provide them the resources, and it's a different resource for younger learners as it is for middle school, as it is for those in high school. So we need to provide them with unique opportunities and those time periods to feel comfortable expressing how they feel, giving them a safe environment to do so, and giving them the resources they feel when they're not ready or when they're having their own issues, to feel comfortable talking about them in an open manner. I feel that this was even hard on the parents, right, this year. So it's going to be hard on the teachers. It's going to be hard on the children, and we need to be there to support them any way we can.
Thank you, Alice. Johan, your question.
I think the first thing we need to do is acknowledge it, right? Acknowledge that there was a change, because I think for some time the perception was a little bit business as usual and everybody's fine. So we need to acknowledge that, this is a big change for the children. They did not just pick up and start learning on day one. We also need to support what they're going through. I know that some of the Boston schools actually had pods where age groups could still see each other in a safe playing environment with their grade and classroom. So we need to support it and find a way to provide socialization without just eliminating it. We also need to give them an adjustment period, right? Because it's not going to happen overnight. For some of these students that returned back to the classroom, they had a hard time returning back to the classroom if they had been remote for most of the year. It didn't happen. It wasn't like 1, 2, 3 for them to just get back in there and do what they needed to do. And also, I think that we should assess and survey what has happened. Have parents tell us, what did you observe with your child? Did you need to give them anything extra? Did they have outside services as a result of this? So that we can provide some sort of group counseling support or any type of support that the school district is able to provide in order to help the students overcome this.
Thank you, Johan. And Robin.
So as an educator, I definitely saw the issues that arose from with social emotional learning as a result of the pandemic. I saw it as a tutor. I saw it as, an aunt and cousin who have family in the district in Danvers K through 9. Danvers does have the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning program that they did adopt for part of their safe learning and student engagement initiative. We need to continue to look at the data, and we need to find out what is working. I think that it needs to definitely be, one of my concerns is that, we've lost so much from a social emotional standpoint, almost like, have kids forgotten to be students again? Do they have the endurance still? Do they remember, it's natural to be social, but social is very different now because they can't get as close and they're in their masks, right? So it's all different for them. So we need to really look at the programs that we have, utilize them, assess them, make changes when necessary, and, get input from parents, from all staff, from the students. And the other piece that I think that we really need to remember is this is not, again, it's an ongoing process. This is not going to be solved by June. This might not even be solved by next year, but it's an ongoing process. And I don't want it to be something, or I feel that it'll be a check off and not fully implemented.
Great. Thank you very much, Robin. Mark?
Oh, I have something really good. Solitary confinement is not even good for the prisoners. And what we have done is we have forced, our government and ourselves have forced us to live in isolation. Even though we know that it's not as extensive as COVID is claimed to be. The issues that our students and our children are experiencing are self-imposed, basically. We need to get out of solitary confinement and move on with our lives, because this is not good for them and it's not good for us. So we should really speak about all ages, how they have been affected, because this is something that's going to be with us for a while, because what we have isolated ourselves to a point where social interaction is beginning to wane. And the problem is that we need to go back to social interaction and we need to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Aaron, over to you for your next question. And Johan, you will be answering this first.
So this is something that some of you guys have already touched on, but I think it's still important to ask. Special education students and their families were uniquely impacted by remote learning. Can you talk a little bit about how they were impacted and also what role the school committee plays in making sure students with special needs don't fall through the cracks in the future?
Absolutely. I think this was an unprecedented year where the district had to shift abruptly to a remote learning model and figure out how to provide equity to all students with that. Obviously, special education students were uniquely, unfortunately, disadvantaged simply because depending on your special need, a remote model would not necessarily work for you. I feel that the remote learning model really, I've heard from voters that it didn't work well for students that were ADHD. I, for one, don't have a student that has something like that, but I've seen the anxiety, I've seen the inability to sit, and what it did was it took away from the learning. It made it impossible or less possible for these students to really get that information where regular students were already suffering and not able to sit still. Now we had an issue where special education students had their own needs and that were not being met. I feel that the district should have, could have done more to uniquely address those needs. However, with the time constraints of COVID and all of that, that wasn't done. I do think in the upcoming year, there should be a better plan so that if we do have to go remote again, that we're prepared to provide the needs that are necessary for those students.
Thank you very much, Johan. Robin, your question.
So we didn't know what really would happen as a result of COVID. What I think definitely did get brought up with special education came to light, even though this had been discussed prior to COVID, that there's inconsistencies within the district as far as how parents go about advocating for their kids, inconsistencies with alignment. I've heard from some voters, they have chosen to actually, some of their kids are special education learners, and they've chosen to keep their kids remote, and they feel like their child has gotten, all the services that they would have been receiving and should have been receiving. But then other voters, feel that, that was not the case, or, even in the classroom, they're back in the classroom, they're not receiving all the services they should be. So there's definitely inconsistency in the district, and that needs to end because that is not providing an equitable education for everyone. If I'm elected, I would definitely be open to having ongoing communication with Danvers CPAC. I think that's important to be transparent and have communication with CPAC. Additionally, I think it's definitely, COVID, we needed more teachers and it took away some of the specialists. And I think that now we need to look at, we took away specialists to teach, and now some of these kids didn't get the services they needed because we didn't have teachers anymore.
Very good. Thank you, Robin. Mark, your answer?
My answer is very short. The special education students returned to class much sooner than the average student that was, being educated on a remote basis. So from my own experience here with our, children that are in the neighborhood, they have returned sooner, but they've also, the parents have stepped in to provide the special services that they need, and they did get busing and into a special education class much sooner than the average person. But the problem is that's a group of students that deserve better, even though this has been in a pandemic situation, everybody calls it that, but they need to get everybody back into class. and into a program that will teach them something instead of watching television on, on the screen all the time. So special services have been provided, and much sooner than the average students, but they need to get more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Alice, your answer, please. You have to unmute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I love the special education families. I feel that they are the loudest ones in our district right now, and they have to be. Mark, not every special education student returns to class, unfortunately, and that's the sad part of it. A lot of them still got their services remote, but they were not in the classroom, unfortunately. We must solve for the gaps that exist with special education. Over 10% of our total school budget is allocated to special education. And, as we've all said, every child in our town should have the same level of access to education as everyone else. When we don't solve for this, it's a domino effect in all of our schools and all of our classrooms. We're not giving teachers and students the support they need to be successful, plain and simple. We take away specialists to cover other classrooms. We take away specialists to step in and substitute for classes. That's not acceptable. Parents of special educational students are true advocates, and they have worked tirelessly over the last year, and I will continue to be that voice for them.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, Aaron, back to you, and Robin, you will be addressing this question first.
So can you guys talk a little bit about how you would approach the budget process? How will you balance district needs against the funds available, and what do you see as some of the priorities for funding?
So about out of the $43 million that we do receive for the budget, about 67% of it does go to teacher salaries. So that, that obviously is a big chunk. We recently bought new textbooks. There's been more money spent recently with buses for athletics. So, there is a lot of money already taken up. And like Alice had mentioned, 11% of the budget is devoted to special education. As a school committee member, what I can do is I'm not going to go write lesson plans and use my knowledge in that as an educator, but I do have the experience to say, okay, we have X amount of dollars left. Let's really look at the policies and the goals we have, and do we need to maybe look at different curriculum or put money in different curriculum or different services to make sure that all our kids are receiving their own personal excellence. One piece of the budget that I'm extremely interested in looking for, that I would like to look at maybe look at the curriculum, is early reading for elementary schools, where we did it 3 years ago, implement phonics into the curriculum, but I do have some concerns are students comprehending what they're reading? And I think that's somewhat showing on some of our tests that grades K through 4 are really not where they should be with reading. So I'd like to look more into that.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. Mark, your answer to that question?
Oh, you hit my subject now. The budget for the schools has been pretty much steady at 2.5%, 3% per year for the last 20 years. The one thing that we forget from the overall standpoint of the entire town is that over $24 million are dedicated towards the school or education budget, in addition to the $43 million. So we have spent $65 million every year on education, whether it's for buildings, for fields, for all kinds of facilities. And the thing is that we have a no inkling of where that money is really being spent. We need to really take a look at the Department of Education in Danvers to determine whether it's being spent in the right location. It's 60% of the town budget that is being spent on education, and that's been rising. It used to be at 40%. So the thing is that we are investing, and we have invested over the years. But the thing is, we need to determine what is the return on that investment. And that's where the school committee has to step in and determine, what are we getting for all these dollars?
All right.
All dollars are not going to solve everything.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Alice, same question.
Thanks. Agree with Mark. A little different perspective. I think it is unique and beneficial to our town that Danvers does allocate part of the town budget to capital investment in our schools. So that provides us with the opportunity to manage the school budgets purely for what the students need. When it comes down to what's needed when we talk about budgets, it's plain and simple. We need better accountability. We need better accountability of student performance. That's what is first and foremost needed. Whether or not it's addressing overcrowding in classrooms, my son currently has 26 children in his 5th grade class. That's not acceptable. I don't know how a teacher can teach to 26 children. So we have to deal with overcrowding. We need to provide teachers with the resources that they need. We need to ask them, what do they need to make their jobs easier, would make their jobs more beneficial for our students. We need their input on it. We need to address the curriculum. As Robin was saying earlier, there's issues with the curriculum. I've heard from many educators within town expressing some concerns about that. So again, looking into those types of issues as well.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Alice. And Johan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first of all, I do think we need to take a look at how much we're spending per student. So we're allocating as much tax dollars per student as many of our adjacent districts. However, we are not spending as much on educators as some of our other high performing nearby towns. We need to really look at where we're recruiting from, because we need to have good educators in order to have a top ranking district. There are a lot of institutions out there that we can look at, Teach for America, Education Pioneers, the Broad Institute, that can help us with this. This is something that we should consider allocating some of our budget to if we want to really improve our district. We do need some outside counsel here. We're not going to be able to come up with all of this information on our own. I do think that seeking outside consultants is something that's really going to be helpful for us, because we need to be able to evaluate our budget, think about what problems there are there, and also keep that information transparent to the community, right? Because if we find inefficiencies, we want to be able to have parents and other stakeholders be involved in that. My son this year had a teacher that was certified rapidly due to Massachusetts making some concessions for COVID. So now we have teachers that were not previously teachers that are teaching a classroom alone. So that's something that we want to make sure we don't have to do again.
Thank you, Johan. I appreciate that. And Robin, you started that, right? So we're all set on those. So we are back to you, Aaron, for our next question.
All right. So what do you consider the importance of including the community in the decision-making process? And how do you plan to include residents in that decision-making process? And how do you plan to make yourself accessible to the public?
I get to get this one first. That's great. The key to the education process is that we need to keep the residents totally engaged, because it's reflective on the whole town. Every time you talk about education or the home values in town, they're all related to the education. We provide supposedly an excellent, education process. But the thing is that we do not have surveys. We do not have student surveys, because that's the first place you should be looking for, is what are they accomplishing? And we need a resident survey of what the residents in this town believe are getting, the children are learning, and how well that is being promulgated to the rest of the town. We need involvement. The surveys are one way of doing it, but the thing is, we need to understand what the education process is in this town. And that's my key element, is that I want to make sure that the expectations, technology, and standards are improved. And they can be improved by asking the question, what are you lacking? I have seen students, even from Danvers, that have worked for large corporations, and they have no idea what they're getting into.
All right, thank you, Mark.
They need better.
Thank you for that. Alice, the next question, or this question, goes to you.
Thank you. I'm going to speak for every single parent in the town of Danvers when I say this. We were not represented this past year with any decision that was made by the school committee, by Lisa Dana, by her team. And it was frustrating. It was frustrating to watch. We emailed, we spoke. She definitely had an open door policy for all of us and responded to many of us in our emails, but we did not feel heard. We were invited to a forum where we were able to share feedback. There was no follow-up from that forum. So there is opportunities for sure to provide feedback. The administration and Lisa needs to be held more accountable in how they're addressing the feedback. I agree that there is better use of surveys. I think that they should go to families. I think they should go to students. It is always important to get feedback from everyone involved, all the stakeholders. It should go to teachers as well. I will have an open door policy. I've spoken to many families in Danvers, whether or not it was over email, phone calls, or just in person, and I will continue to be that voice of Danvers families on the school committee, and I will make sure that your voices are heard on the Danvers School Committee.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, Johan, your answer, please.
The importance of keeping our residents engaged, it really has to do with understanding where the problems lie. There's no way that we're going to know where the problems are and where the gaps are if we're not speaking to the demographic that's actually experiencing it. And we've spoken in this forum a little bit about perspective, and the perspective of the administrator is different from the perspective of the stakeholders, the parents, and the children that are actually experiencing all of this. So we need to be in the loop so that we're ensuring that the decisions that we're making are actually those that are going to impact our community. Otherwise, we really don't know if what we're doing is hitting home the way it should. During this school committee process, I've kept myself available, and I plan to continue to keep myself available via direct message, email, being out in the public, being in, public schools, talking to parents, and making yourself available. Some people even text me, which is perfectly fine. Making myself available to parents so that they can have a voice in all of this. Unfortunately, a lot of the parents' voice went basically on fallen deaf ears on social media. And we don't want that. That should be cultivated, it should be constructed, and it should go somewhere so that we can constructively look at that information and say, how do we as a district address these needs and solve these problems?
Very good. Thank you, Johan. And Robin, I see you've unmuted yourself, so please answer the question.
Okay, so I definitely think the first thing we do need to do is listen and hear from families, as they're the ones that are in and experiencing every day. Their students are in the classroom, and I'm caregivers also, so not just parents. I think that we have to look at the school as part of the community. And one thing that I did find while I've been canvassing is that even though, voters might not have a child directly in the school system anymore or yet, they still care. Like, they still want a strong school. So we obviously need to first hear from parents. We need to hear from teachers, all staff within the school, students. And we really need to be open to having like those difficult conversations together and collaboratively in a safe environment. I think that we have some great partnerships that we can continue to bring the community, to have the community part of the school. Like with DEEP, we have great partnership with. The senior internship allows the students to go out with the community and make more connections, which I think we should continue. It might look a little differently this year with COVID. Surveys is one way. I think that people really, with the use of social media, we should be actively using that. There's a lot of school committees in other districts that have a Facebook page just for their school committee. And I think that's one way for people who utilize technology. That's one way.
Very good. Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that. Back to you, Erin. And this will be our last question. And Alice, you're going to start answering it first. And then after that, you'll all have 2 minutes to make your closing statement. So, Erin?
That's actually all 6 questions that I had.
Oh, you got them all in. Excellent. I should have been counting.
You can do closing statements.
That's right. So let's start with our closing statements then. And Johan, you will be going first with your closing statement, and then Alice, and then Mark, and then Robin. Johan?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank everyone for being present at this forum. I think it's really important that we were able to sit and talk together. So thank you again to DCAT. In closing, I just want to say that the school committee functions as a committee. We function as a team. So whomever you as voters vote in, we are going to work with the existing school committee members to ensure that your needs are met. And we want to make sure that parents are heard and so that they feel that they have a voice, okay? Lastly, I want to say that we need to look at our curriculum. This is extremely, extremely important. We have to think about it. Is it outdated? Can we aim to overachieve rather than just meet those standards? We know what the core standards are, but we want to go above and beyond that, okay? We need to be proactive, not reactive. If anything proved it, it was COVID, okay? It forced our feet to the fire. And that said, that's another thing that we have to consider when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I spent over a year working with the elementary school districts trying to create a group where there was a forum for parents so that they could have a voice in everything that they felt from a diversity and inclusion perspective. There's a group in the high school, which is awesome. It was a reactive group. We need to be proactive and have groups on all levels so that parents can voice their concerns and be engaged from day one. Again, that also needs to be into the curriculum so that we are not dealing with these issues at the high school. We're addressing them before they become issues and that we're all aware. I like to thank everyone who has been supportive of me. And again, I'm always here as a voice for parents. Please feel free to reach out to me on my Facebook page or my email whenever you need to at Johan Hunter for Danvers School Committee on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johan. Appreciate your nice closing statement. Alice, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. The school committee needs to work with administration and hold them accountable to get our students back up to their learning levels and standards pre-COVID. Once this is addressed, then we really need to improve upon where we were pre-COVID, because being average in the state should not be acceptable to any of us here today. As a parent, I'm concerned with all of the change happening at many of our schools. We have new principals for the high school, the middle school, Riverside, Smith. Our Highlands principal is only 1 year in. It feels like we're doing cleanup every 5 years at the elementary level. We also have seen some great teachers leave. I want to know why we're not renewing contracts for new teachers when their 3 years are up. Many of our schools have lost excellent teachers. Their contracts just were not renewed. We're facing a crisis at the high school. Incoming freshmen are asking their families to go elsewhere. That should startle us all. everyone on this call and everyone in town. We need to support everyone to commit to strengthening the student experience. We need to elevate our academic standards and keep our expectations high. We must bring the pride back to our Danvers schools. I know we can. It will take change. It will take someone who will ask the hard questions and be the real voice of the families in our town. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves. I'm ready to work hard for each and every student in Danvers. We all have responsibility to be well informed about the candidates we are choosing. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to watch this forum. We will have a role in working together to build a district that we're all very proud of. I want to thank Robin, Joe, and Mark. I've really enjoyed my time with you guys over the past hour. And for every voter, when you vote on May 4th, please consider what you want the future of education to look like in Danvers. There's a lot at stake. Parents and families cannot afford to stay home. So please, please, please go out and vote. Again, if you have any questions, if you want to share feedback, stories, please continue to reach out to me at alicecampbellfordanvers@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook at Alice Campbell for Danvers School Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, Mark, your final 2 minutes, please.
I have 2 minutes. Great. Thank you. The one thing that I like to say in closing is that it's been a pleasure doing this forum, because this is really the first and in-person interview, basically, of our candidates for the school committee. School committee is very important in this town because it delivers the education process for our students and our residents of 27,000 people in this town. The one thing that we need to make sure, and I'll go back to my 4 major points, is that we need a school committee that will lead and not just follow, and be an independent body that provides the eyes and ears of the residents during the meetings and during the administrative process. We are making the education, we have to make the education process more open and obvious. And that goes to curriculum, and it goes to other effects. Getting community feedback. I've heard this thing for the past hour, and I believe this is the most important part. Feedback from the community and their input, and putting that input into action. We need to improve the expectations, technology, and standards, because we need to make sure that our students are better prepared in the future. Therefore, I ask that you vote for me, Mark Zubrek, on May 4th for one of the 2 open seats on the school committee. It is time for a change.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Robin, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
If I'm elected to the Danvers School Committee, I would be the only public educator on the committee and the only Danvers native. As an educator, I inherently care about all students. I have nieces, nephews, and cousins in the Danvers Public Schools, as well as lifelong friends whose children also attend the public school system. School is a learning community or family, and if it's elected to the school committee, I'll use my knowledge as a career educator to make it my responsibility and concern to ensure that every child is receiving their personal best. I have the skills, expertise, and passion to improve the quality of education for all our learners. It's important that the district revisits the strategic plan. We have one: safe learning environment, comprehensive curriculum, and student engagement. And in addition to ensuring that the outcomes are met and that we are using our budget wisely to accommodate the needs of the district. A focus of mine would definitely be to ensure that the budget is allocated for education. This past year has been extremely difficult for all parties, and now is not the time to do more with less money. As a school committee member, I pledge to be transparent, accountable, reflective, and provide practical solutions to move our district forward, to ensure every student receives an equitable education and that students are at the center of every decision that is made in the district. We can do better. We will do better. I can be reached at doherty4danverssc@gmail.com, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 4th.
Thank you very much, Robin. And I want to give a special thank you to Erin for taking the time and the energy to come up with such thoughtful questions for our candidates tonight. This has been, I feel, a very important forum, as Mark said, to actually get your voices out in front of the voters, give them your thoughts, your rationale, your opinions on what is going to make our school system better for not just all the students in Danvers, but the whole community. So to all of our candidates, to Mark, to Johan, to Robin, and to Alice, thank you very much for participating in today's forum and for not just participating in the forum, but putting your hat in the ring, to actually taking the time to run for public office, to give up that time with your families, to spend a lot of extra energy and commitment that you're going to make if you win the seat in the years to come. So thank you all very much for participating in tonight's performance, and to Danvers, we hope this is beneficial to you, and we wish you all a good night.